A poor mechanic found a lost girl, sleeping in his garage. She changed his life forever. What if the only thing you remembered was a lullaby? And what if that lullaby led you to a stranger's garage, where a quiet old man, haunted by loss, hadn't let anyone in for years? This is the story of a forgotten girl, a grieving father, and a melody that refused to be silenced. A story about memory, music, and the kind of love we choose. So, if you believe that kindness can still change the course of a life, and that sometimes home finds you when you least expect it, you won't want to miss this one. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the chapters that will quietly steal your heart. Now settle in, because this is where it begins. The girl who remembered the song let the story play. The wind that evening was sharp, the kind that found its way through the tiniest cracks and whispered through the eaves like an old ghost. Cal Bennett tightened the collar of his flannel jacket as he pulled down the garage door, the metallic groan echoing in the empty twilight. Another long day fixing busted engines and rusted brake lines, alone except for the creak of tools, and the occasional call-in customer too broke to pay in full. He was just turning off the light when he heard it, a soft, irregular rustle from the far corner of the shop, behind the old Ford pickup that hadn't run since 1987. Cal froze, hands still hovering near the switch. Raccoon, maybe, or a stray dog. But then it came again, softer now, breathing. He took slow steps toward the sound, boots crunching lightly on oil-stained concrete. As he turned the corner of the truck bed, he stopped. There she was, a girl, maybe 18, maybe younger, curled up beneath a dusty tarp, wrapped tight in a denim jacket 2 sizes too big. Her face was pale beneath a mess of dark curls, cheeks smudged, shoes nearly worn through. She looked asleep, though her eyes flickered faintly beneath her lids, and her lips moved almost imperceptibly. Cal's first instinct was caution. He stepped back, heart thudding with the uneasy sense of intrusion, his or hers, he wasn't sure. This was his place, his world of grease and quiet, and he hadn't shared it with anyone in years. Not since Margaret passed, not since Lily left. He reached for his phone, then she murmured something. It stopped him cold, a melody, faint, whispered like a ghost. Golden sky. Hush now, cry. Mama's near, don't say goodbye. Cal's hand trembled. That song, that exact lullaby. Margaret used to sing it, not some common folk tune, their song. She made it up for Lily when she was a baby. No one else could have known it, not like that, not the tune, not the words. He dropped his phone into his pocket, his breath caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief. "Hey," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "Hey now, you all right?" The girl stirred, eyelashes fluttering. She looked up at him, disoriented, as if waking from a dream or stepping into one. Her eyes were grey-blue, like a lake before a storm. She didn't answer, just blinked, then tried to sit up but winced and fell back against the wall. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head slightly. "No, just cold, tired." He hesitated, then sighed. "You can't stay out here. It's below freezing tonight. Come on." He offered a hand. She looked at it, like it was a foreign object, then took it, lightly, as if she didn't quite believe it was real. Her hand was ice-cold. He led her across the gravel lot to the small side door of his house, modest, cluttered but warm. Inside, the kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. Cal turned on a lamp, its golden glow casting long shadows. "Sit down," he said, motioning to the kitchen table. "You eat." She shook her head again. "I don't remember." "Don't remember if you ate?" "I don't remember anything." "Not really." He looked at her for a long moment. "Your name?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Something twisted in his chest. He went to the pantry, pulled out a can of soup, and set it on the stove. Well, you've got a place to sit and soup to eat. That's a start. They didn't speak for several minutes. The girl's eyes wandered the room. Photos on the fridge, the chipped ceramic mug by the sink, the worn armchair in the corner. When the soup was ready, he poured it into a bowl and set it in front of her. She took the spoon in small, cautious bites, like she wasn't sure how her hands were supposed to work. Cal leaned back in his chair, watching her quietly. He wasn't used to guests, hadn't had anyone at this table in over a decade. Not since, she hummed again, just under her breath. The song. He swallowed hard. Where'd you hear that? She looked up. What? That lullaby. You were singing it earlier. Her brow furrowed. I don't know. It just came to me like a memory I don't own. He stood almost too quickly, went to the sideboard and opened a drawer, fished out an old cassette tape. This, he said, holding it up. This was my wife, Margaret. She recorded that song. She made it. Up for our daughter when she was born. It ain't on any record. The girl's eyes widened. She reached out a shaking hand, touching the edge of the tape like it might burn her. I heard it in my sleep, she whispered. I didn't even know I was singing. Cal's breath came slow and heavy. He didn't believe in fate. He believed in oil filters, carburetors, and work done with your own two hands. But in that moment, standing in his dim-lit kitchen with a lost girl who sang his wife's song, something cracked open inside him, something buried and brittle. Maybe she wasn't. Just some runaway. Maybe she was here for a reason. The morning broke slow and pale, the kind of quiet light that slips through old curtains like it's afraid to wake the house. Cal Bennett stood by the kitchen sink, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. His eyes drifted to the girl still asleep. On the couch, curled up beneath the faded patchwork quilt Margaret made the year Lily was born. She hadn't moved much through the night. Her breathing was steady now, softer than it had been in the garage. There was color in her cheeks again. She looked so young in the morning light. Too young to be wandering alone, sleeping in strangers' garages. Too lost. Cal didn't know what to make of any of it. She didn't know her name, didn't know where she was from, didn't even flinch when he'd asked if she wanted to call someone. She'd only stared at the receiver like it belonged to another world. And yet, she sang that song. The same melody Margaret had cradled Lily with on long winter nights, the one Cal could still hear if he let the silence linger too long. That part still sat heavy in his chest. He turned as the girl stirred, eyes fluttering open. She sat up slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar room, her hands clenched tightly around the quilt as if anchoring herself. "Morning," Cal said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "I didn't know if you'd sleep through or bolt before sunrise." She offered a faint smile, timid, uncertain. "I didn't want to run, just didn't know where else to be." He nodded. "Still cold out there. Coffee's hot if you drink it." She sat up straighter. "I think I do." Cal poured her a cup, then slid it across the table. She wrapped her fingers around the mug like it was a small miracle. For a long while they just sat, the soft hum of the old fridge filling the silence between them. "Do you remember anything new this morning?" he asked gently. She shook her head. Still blank. "It's like walking through fog. I know how to talk. I know what a toaster is. I know this is coffee. But I don't remember who I am or how I got here. That kind of memory loss," he said slowly, "can be from trauma, shock, or a hit to the head. I don't think I was hurt." She touched her forehead lightly, then looked at him. "You think I should go to the hospital?" "You'd probably get answers faster," Cal admitted. "But I also know places like that can be overwhelming, especially when you don't have someone walking in with you." She looked down. "I don't have anyone." Cal studied her, then exhaled. "All right, you can stay here just until we figure things out." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Don't make me regret it," he said, sipping his coffee. "House isn't much, but it's warm, and I don't like the idea of sending someone out into the cold just 'cause I'm set in my ways." She nodded quickly. "I won't be a burden. I can help clean or cook if I remember how." He chuckled. "Well, you can start by helping me sort bolts and washers later. If you're real unlucky, I'll even teach you about carburetors." A small, genuine laugh escaped her lips, the first Cal had heard. It was light, airy, like a wind chime stirred after years of silence. "Can I ask something?" she said, more serious now. "Go ahead." "That song you said your wife wrote." Cal's expression shifted, softening. "Yeah, Margaret. She had this way about her, used to hum all the time. One day, when Lily was just a baby, she sat at the piano and came up with that lullaby out of nowhere. Said it came to her in a dream. We used to joke it had magic in it." She looked down into her coffee. "I feel like I've heard it before. Not just in my sleep, deeper than that." Cal hesitated, heart pinching in that familiar way it had for years. "You remind me of her, of Lily, too." She looked up. "Your daughter?" He nodded. "She left home when she was 16. After Margaret passed. We argued that night. I told her she was being selfish. She told me I didn't know how to grieve without pushing people away. Next morning she was gone. I never saw her again." A silence settled between them, not awkward, heavy with things unsaid. "I'm sorry," she said. Cal waved a hand, dismissing the pity. "We all lose people, sometimes by death, sometimes by choice. But you never stopped missing her." He met her gaze. "No, I never did." The girl sat back, her fingers tracing the mug. "Maybe that's why I ended up here." He raised an eyebrow. "You think that's how fate works?" "I don't know," she said quietly, "but it feels like I was meant to find this place. That song, your wife, it's the only thing in my head that doesn't feel empty." Cal didn't answer right. Away. He didn't have answers, only instincts, and an ache in his chest that hadn't dulled in years, but somehow didn't feel quite so sharp this morning. "Then maybe we figure it out together," he said finally, "step by step, bolt by bolt." She looked at him, startled, then nodded slowly as if something in her had decided to trust him. Outside, the wind had quieted. The sky, once grey and heavy, gave way to a soft ribbon of gold along the horizon. Cal stood, refilled both mugs, and set hers down with the same care one might offer to something fragile, not because it was weak, but because it mattered. She still didn't know her name, but for now she had warmth and soup, and someone who didn't ask for more than she could give. By late afternoon, the Montana sky had settled into its favorite shade of gold, faint and brushed with lavender, like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Cal stood over the stove, stirring a pot of homemade chicken soup. He didn't cook often anymore, not since Margaret, but today felt different. The girl, still nameless, though Cal had started calling her Kid out of habit, sat quietly at the table, watching him. She wasn't a talker, not yet, but she listened well, eyes sharp, observant. She'd spent most of the day helping him sort through bolts and spark plugs in the garage. Hands clumsy at first, but willing. That was something Cal respected. Willingness. "You ever cook?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. She looked up from the mug of tea she'd been nursing. "I think so," she said. "I don't remember recipes or anything, but peeling potatoes felt familiar." Cal nodded. "Muscle memory. Funny thing. Sometimes your hands remember what your head forgets." She smiled faintly. "I like that." The soup began to bubble gently, its scent wafting through the kitchen. Garlic, thyme, a hint of lemon, just like Margaret used to make it. It was a scent that filled the house with something more than warmth. Memory, maybe, or comfort. He ladled it into 2 bowls and set them on the table. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's hot and it won't kill you." She picked up the spoon and took a careful bite. Then another, and another. Her eyes widened. "This is amazing." Cal chuckled, sitting across from her. Don't sound so surprised. She swallowed, then set the spoon down. It's not just the taste, it's the feeling, like I've had this before, like I'm home. That caught him off guard. Margaret used to say food was memory, he said quietly. You eat something, and it unlocks something old. A smell, a sound, a moment. She nodded slowly. Maybe that's what this is. A moment I don't remember, but my heart does. They ate in silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It was full, like a song with no words, just the hum of understanding. Cal found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. Her posture, the way she held the spoon, the rhythm of her chewing. It was unnerving how familiar it all felt. Later, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long golden shadows across the floor, she wandered toward the bookshelf by the window. Most of it was cluttered with Margaret's old books, poetry, gardening guides, hymnals, and a few family photo albums. Her fingers hovered above the spines, hesitating. You can look, Cal said, sipping the last of his coffee. Nothing in there that bites. She pulled out a small leather-bound album and sat back down at the table. Slowly, she opened it. There were photos of Margaret in her garden, smiling with dirt-smudged hands. Photos of Cal in his younger days, holding a baby girl on his lap. Camping trips, Christmas mornings. One worn picture of Lily at about 7 years old, sitting at the piano, her hair in messy braids, fingers frozen mid-chord. This is her? She asked. Cal leaned over. Yeah, that's Lily. She loved that piano. Margaret taught her to play, used to sing along while she practiced. She looks happy, the girl said softly. She was. There was a pause. Then, she looks like me. Cal didn't answer. He didn't need to. The resemblance had been tugging at him since the moment he saw her in the garage. Not identical, no, but in the eyes, the tilt of the head, the way she bit her lip when she was unsure. All small things, but they built into something hard to ignore. I'm not her, she added, almost apologetically. I know, he said, his voice quiet, but part of me wants to be. Cal looked at her, really looked, and in her eyes he saw something raw and honest, a longing not to be someone else, but to belong somewhere. He nodded slowly. And part of me wants you to be too. The room grew still. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, brushing against the windows like a forgotten lullaby. She closed the album carefully. Thank you for letting me stay, she said. You're not a prisoner, he replied. You need a place to figure things out. This is as good a place as any, she smiled. It's better than most. Later, as night wrapped around the small house like a warm shawl, Cal found himself in the den, staring at the old piano Lily used to play. Dust covered the keys now, but the wood was still solid, still beautiful. He brushed his fingers across. The keys. A single note rang out, echoing softly. From the doorway, the girl spoke. I knew a song. Cal turned. She stepped into the room, barefoot, cautious, sat down on the bench, placed her fingers on the keys, uncertain at first, then slowly pressing down in a halting rhythm. The melody was broken, imperfect, but then it wasn't. It was the song. Golden sky, hush now, cry. Mama's near, don't say goodbye. Cal's breath caught in his throat. The girl didn't sing, just played. But the tune was there, unmistakable. Margaret's song. He closed his eyes, let the music fill the room like sunlight returning to a place it had long abandoned. When it ended, she turned to him. Her voice trembled. I don't know how I remembered. That. Cal didn't answer right away. He couldn't. His voice wouldn't work. Finally, he managed, maybe you didn't remember it. Maybe it remembered you. She stared at him, her eyes shimmering, and in that moment Cal no longer cared where she came from, or even what her real name was. She was here, and for the first time in years, the house no longer felt so quiet. The next morning brought with it a light frost on the windows, as if the world had held its breath in the night and exhaled only when dawn arrived. Cal stood in the garage, wiping down a wrench with a rag that had seen too many years. The heater rattled to life in the corner, giving off more noise than warmth. The girl had woken early, unprompted, and padded out to the garage with that tentative curiosity he was beginning to recognize. She didn't ask questions, just watched him work, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee. "Want to learn how to change a spark plug?" he asked. She blinked. "Sure." He handed her a socket wrench and motioned toward the old truck he'd been tinkering with for the better part of a year. "You've got good hands. Not afraid of grease, that's rare." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I used to fix things." "Maybe you still do," he said, meaning more than she probably realized. They worked in companionable silence. Cal showed her how to loosen the plug, check for corrosion, reset the gap. She followed every step like a student afraid to disappoint a teacher. But she was quick, smarter than she gave herself credit for. After an hour, they took a break. Cal poured them both more coffee and pulled up a stool near the bench. "Ever kept a journal?" he asked suddenly. She looked surprised. "No. Should I?" Cal stood, walked over to the corner cabinet, and returned with a small, leather-bound notebook. Its edges were worn, and the spine had been mended with electrical tape. "This was Margaret's," he said. "She used to write in it every day. Recipes, dreams, memories, little things. Said it helped her make sense of life. When she passed, I started using it, not every day, but when I needed to." He opened it to a bookmarked page and handed it to her. There, in looping cursive, was a short entry. "The June 3rd. Cal fixed the radio again. Said he couldn't stand the silence. I think it's because he misses Lily's music. He'll never admit it. But he hums her lullaby when he's sanding the workbench. There's love in his silence. He just doesn't know how to give it words." The girl stared at the page, her eyes tracing the lines like they were sacred. "I've never seen handwriting like this," she said quietly. Cal smiled. She had a way with words. "Me, I just write. When I'm angry or tired, but sometimes it helps." She turned another page, then another. Each one held a fragment of their lives, a slice of time preserved in ink. There were grocery lists, sketches of flowers from Margaret's garden, even song lyrics scribbled in the margins. Then something caught her eye. A page dated October 18th, 2005. "Lily's scar is healing nicely. Doctor said no complications. She's already back at the piano, pretending she's playing Carnegie Hall. Cal says it'll fade in a few months. I hope it doesn't. I want her to always remember how strong she is." The girl's fingers froze over the words. Without realizing, her hand went to the back of her neck. Slowly, she swept her hair aside. There, just below the hairline, was a small, crescent-shaped scar. Cal's stomach flipped. He didn't move, didn't speak. She looked up at him, her face pale. "Do you think—" Her voice barely broke the silence. Cal swallowed. "I don't know." She reached for the page again. Her fingers traced the curve of Margaret's words like they were a map. "I've had this scar as long as I can remember, or as long as I don't remember. I never knew where it came from." Cal exhaled slowly. "It could be coincidence, or it could mean something. I don't want to believe it just because I want it to be true," she said, voice shaking. He nodded. "That's wise. But it's okay to hope too." The moment hung between them, fragile, sacred. Two people on either side of something. Too big to name. Then gently she closed the book. "I want to write in it," she said. "Is that okay?" Cal hesitated, then nodded. "It's what it's for." She found an empty page near the back, picked up a pen from the bench, and wrote, "I don't know my name. I don't know where I came from, but I know the smell of soup and the sound of old radios and the warmth of this garage. I remember a song and a scar and a man who listens with his silence. Today, that's enough. Cal read it when she left to wash her hands. Quietly, reverently. The words were simple, but they hit him like a freight train. Later that afternoon, she helped him close up the garage. The sun was dipping low, setting the sky on fire with shades of peach and crimson. Cal stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching her gather in tools like she'd done it 100 times. "You've got a good rhythm," he said. She looked up, smiled. "Maybe I was a mechanic." He shook his head. "No, mechanics fix machines. You've got a touch for people." She tilted her head. "That sounds like something your wife would have written." He grinned. "Maybe it is. Her words tend to stick." As they stepped inside for the night, Cal looked back at the garage, the same garage where he'd spent the last decade growing old in solitude. And now, somehow, it felt different. Not just a place where engines got fixed, but a place where something lost had started to find its way back. The storm rolled in just past midnight. It began with a low rumble over the mountains, like some ancient beast waking from sleep. Cal heard it from his bedroom, the same way he always had, half asleep, half alert, trained by years of sleepless nights and sudden Montana weather. He sat up, listened to the wind creep through the siding, and then the rain came, sharp, insistent, tapping like fingers at the windows. He slipped out of bed, threw on his robe, and padded toward the hallway. Cha-cha-cha. Piano was playing, not loud, just enough for the melody to hover like mist in the air. A simple repeating phrase, fragile, almost hesitant, the lullaby. Cal's heart caught. In the dim light from the kitchen he saw her, seated at the old upright, barefoot in one of his flannel shirts, sleeves rolled to the elbows, her back straight, fingers trembling ever so slightly on the keys. She didn't see him at first. Her eyes were closed. She sang. "Golden sky, hush now, cry. Mama's near, don't say goodbye." Her voice was soft, childlike, filled with a kind of sacred sadness. It wrapped around the notes like fog, curling through a field. When she reached the end of the verse, she opened her eyes and saw him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It was just in my head. I couldn't sleep." Cal shook his head. "No, don't be sorry. That song, it belongs here." She turned back to the keys, touched one, then another. "I had a dream." Cal sat slowly in the armchair by the window. "Yeah?" She nodded, not looking at him. "There was a woman. She was sitting beside me on a porch swing, holding a mug, telling me to hush, that everything would be all right. She smelled like lavender and honey." Cal closed his eyes. Margaret. That was her scent, always. "She called me by name," the girl said, voice cracking. She said, "Lily, don't be afraid." The room fell silent except for the gentle tapping of rain on the roof. "Are you sure?" Cal asked, his voice a whisper. She looked at him, tears brimming. "It felt more real than anything I've remembered so far." He couldn't speak. His throat closed up, the way it always did when grief collided with hope. It wasn't just the name, it was the way she said it, as if it belonged to her. "But I thought we said it was just coincidence," she added quickly, like she was trying to protect him. "The scar, the song, it doesn't prove anything." "No," Cal said softly. "It doesn't." She bit her lip. "Do you want it to be true?" He met her eyes. More than anything. The clock on the wall ticked loudly between them. "I want it to be true too," she whispered. Cal leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then let's not rush it. We'll take this one piece at a time. Maybe there's something else that'll come back to you. Something certain." She looked down at her hands. "What if there isn't? What if this is all just some cruel trick my brain's playing?" "Then we deal with that. Together." The word "together" seemed to sit between them like a warm stone. Neither of them said anything for a long while. Eventually Cal stood. "Come on, can't sleep with that storm anyway. I'll make cocoa." They sat at the kitchen table, two mismatched mugs steaming between them. Outside, the rain softened to a patter. The girl, Lily maybe, held the mug close to her chest. "When I woke up," she said, "I remembered a song I used to sing to my cat. It's silly, just a rhyme, but I remember sitting on a bedroom floor with pink curtains and a nightlight shaped like a moon." Cal felt something stir inside him. He got up, crossed to the small linen closet near the hall, and rummaged for a moment. When he returned, he held something wrapped in plastic, an old nightlight, shaped like a crescent moon. "She was scared of the dark," he said. "Margaret bought this for her when she was 5. She wouldn't sleep without it." The girl stared at it, wide-eyed. Slowly, she reached out and unwrapped it. Her fingers trembled as she plugged it into the wall socket. It lit up immediately, casting a soft yellow glow across the floor. She covered her mouth. "I've seen this," she said, her voice shaking. "I remember it. I remember lying on the floor with a blanket over my head, waiting for the stars to show up on the ceiling." Cal nodded, unable to speak. Then she said it, softly, like a prayer. "I think my name is Lily." Something broke open inside him. Not like a wound, but like a door that had been shut for too long. He got up, slowly, carefully, and stepped across the room. He didn't touch her, just sat beside her, hands folded in his lap. "I've hoped for this for 15 years, he said. "Every birthday, every holiday, every time I heard footsteps in the gravel." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "I don't remember everything," she said. "But I remember you now. Not fully, just the way you used to hum, the way your beard scratched when you kissed my forehead." Cal let out a sound, half laugh, half sob. "I did that every night," he said. "Didn't matter how old you got." They sat there, quiet, as the storm faded beyond the hills, and though the wind still whispered through the trees, and the past still held more questions than answers, Cal knew one thing without doubt. His daughter had come home. Maybe not all at once, maybe not completely, but she was here, and that was enough. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that unfolded slowly, one breath at a time. Outside, the air hung heavy with the scent of pine and thawing earth. Spring was inching its way across Montana in soft, stubborn steps. Inside the house, the old upright piano had been dusted for the first time in years. Cal hadn't meant to do it. He'd walked past it on his way to the kitchen, the same way he had every day since Margaret passed. But that morning, something made him stop. The way the light hit the keys. The memory of Lily, his Lily, feet swinging, brow furrowed in concentration. As she practiced her scales, he'd reached for a cloth without thinking. Now the girl, Lily again maybe, stood beside the piano, running her fingers along the polished wood. Her hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and she wore one of Cal's old flannel shirts over jeans that barely held together at the knees. "I remember this," she murmured. "Not all of it, but the feel of it, the way the keys dip beneath your fingers, the sound they make when you press too hard." Cal sat in the armchair by the window, sipping his second cup of coffee. He didn't want to interrupt the moment. Moments like this were delicate things, like spiderwebs caught in morning light. She sat down on the bench, hesitated, then began to play. It was a halting melody at first, just a few soft notes. She stopped, shook her head, then tried again. The notes were clumsy, uncertain, but they carried something beneath them, a rhythm just out of reach. Cal watched, his chest tightening. It was the way she tilted her head, the slight squint in her eyes when she focused. All the things he remembered from the little girl who used to play chopsticks with a kind of reverence. Then the tune shifted, became something else. A new melody, but familiar in the way a half-remembered dream can be. She wasn't reading music, wasn't thinking even. She was remembering. Suddenly she stopped. Her fingers hovered above the keys. "Do you have any sheet music?" she asked. "Something old?" Cal stood, crossed to the cabinet where Margaret used to keep her music. He hadn't touched it in years. When he opened the drawer, the scent of old paper and time spilled out. He handed her a worn folder labeled in Margaret's handwriting, "For Lily, beginner pieces and favorites." She took it with a kind of reverence, opened the first page, smiled. "I played this," she said. "I remember the cover, the handwriting." She ran her fingers along the ink as if it were braille. Her smile faltered, her eyes clouded. "I used to sit here," she whispered. "I was smaller. My feet didn't reach the pedals." Cal sat beside her on the bench, quiet, present. "I remember Margaret's voice," she said, "but not her face. That scares me." "You'll remember," Cal said gently. "Sometimes memory comes back in fragments. You gather them like puzzle pieces, one at a time." "I wish it would hurry," she said with a broken laugh. "I feel like I'm living in someone else's body." He reached out, placed a hand on hers. "You're home now. That's a good place to start remembering." She nodded. "I want to try again." They played side by side for a while, simple duets, old songs. Sometimes she missed a note and laughed. Sometimes she hit one just right and closed her eyes as if holding on to it. And Cal, who hadn't touched a piano in decades, found himself humming along. Later she asked, "Can we try to find something official, like records, birth certificates? I want to be sure." Cal looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes. "You sure you're ready?" She nodded. "I have to know if this is real, if I'm really Lily." He thought for a moment, then said, "I know a guy, retired cop, owes me more than a few favors. We'll call him tomorrow." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That evening, as the sun melted behind the hills, Lily sat by the window with the journal in her lap, the one that had once belonged to Margaret. She wrote slowly, carefully, as if each word had to be earned. Cal watched from the kitchen. She was so much like her mother. The quiet strength, the way she carried her uncertainty with grace. And though his heart ached with the weight of not knowing for sure, of not really knowing, it also swelled with something bigger. Hope. He stepped outside onto the porch and looked out over the fields. The wind stirred the trees in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel quite so old, quite so worn. Inside, Lily played the lullaby again, this time from memory. Note by note, clear and sure. Margaret's melody, and Cal closed his eyes and let it carry him back. To nights when the house was full of light and laughter, to a baby wrapped in a blue blanket, to the smell of lavender and the soft hum of love lived daily. When the song ended, Lily came to stand. Beside him, journal still in hand. "I wrote something," she said. "Want to hear it?" He nodded. She read. "Today I played the piano, and my fingers knew something my mind didn't. I remembered a smell, a sound, a feeling. I don't have all the pieces yet, but I'm not afraid of the blank spaces anymore. I think the music is leading me home." Cal didn't speak. He just reached out, pulled her into a quiet embrace, and let the dusk settle around them like a warm coat. The letter came in a plain white envelope, no return address, the kind of quiet delivery that had the weight of something permanent. Cal held it in his hand for a long moment before bringing it inside, his thumb grazing the edge, the way one might touch something fragile, like old glass or a sleeping child. He found Lily on the porch swing, wrapped in a knit blanket, a book unopened in her lap. The sun was just beginning its descent behind the hills, and the sky had turned a soft, blushing orange. "It came," he said simply, holding up the envelope. She looked at it, then at him, and something in her face flickered. Fear, maybe, or hope trying not to show itself too loudly. "Do you want to open it?" he asked. She nodded, slowly. together. They sat at the kitchen table side by side, just as they had for weeks now. Cal handed her the envelope, and she opened it with careful fingers, unfolding the single sheet inside. Her eyes scanned the page. He watched her face shift, read it again, then again, and finally she said it, quiet, as if the words might shatter. It said, "I'm not her." Cal's stomach dropped, the breath leaving his lungs like a slow leak. He took the paper from her gently and read it himself. DNA results. Inconclusive match. Probability of biological paternity less than 0.1%. Not a match, not his daughter, not Lily. The silence that followed was thick and unbearable. Lily stared down at her hands. "I really thought I was," she whispered. "I did too," Cal said. His voice was rough, not from anger, but from the ache that bloomed behind his ribs. "I was so sure," she said. "The scar, the song, the piano." Cal reached out, covering her hand with his. "None of that changes what you are to me." She blinked back tears, but her voice cracked anyway. "I feel like I stole something from you." "You didn't steal a thing, but I made you believe I was your daughter." "You didn't make me," he said firmly. "I chose to believe because you felt like home." Her tears came quietly then, slipping down her cheeks one by one. "I wanted it so badly," she whispered. "Not just to belong somewhere, but to belong here. With you." Cal squeezed her hand. "Then stay." She looked up. "Even now, especially now." The weight in the room didn't lift, but it shifted, like a storm that had passed, leaving everything damp and changed, but still standing. Later that night, Lily sat on the floor in front of the fireplace, the journal open on her lap. She hadn't written anything yet, just stared at the blank page, pen in hand. Cal came in quietly, carrying a folded blanket and a fresh cup of tea. He set both beside her, then sat down across from her on the rug. The firelight danced in her eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, "about that song." She glanced at him. "It's not just a lullaby," he continued. "It's a thread, something passed down, not by blood, but by heart. Margaret wrote it for Lily, yes, but maybe it was meant for you too." Lily looked down. "I'm not your daughter." "No," Cal said, "but you're someone's daughter. And maybe fate brought you here because this house had room for another one." She didn't answer right away. "Then you still want me to stay?" "I didn't open my door because I thought you were family. I opened it because you were cold, lost, and kind. That hasn't changed." A small, trembling smile touched her lips. "You're not going to let me run away from this, are you?" "Only if you're running towards something better." She shook her head. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." They sat like that for a long time, firelight warming the silence between them. Eventually, Lily picked up the pen and began to write. "Today I learned the truth. I am not Lily Bennett, but I am not lost. I am not alone. I am not a question anymore. I am the girl who came in from the cold, who remembered a song, who played a broken piano and was told to stay. And I did. And I will." The next morning, Cal found her outside near the workshop, hammering a loose board back into place on the shed. She was humming, not the lullaby this time, but something brighter, new. "You building something?" he asked, smiling. She nodded. "Just fixing what's crooked." He paused, then said softly, "I think we both are." The snow had finally melted for good. By late April, the trees that bordered the garage had begun to stretch, timid and green, and the fields beyond shimmered with the quiet promise of spring. Cal stood out front, leaning against the hood of a customer's sedan, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better days. The familiar rhythm of the work was comforting, something to do, something to mend, but his eyes kept drifting toward the side of the house. She was there, Lily, though they both knew now that wasn't really her name, kneeling in the dirt where Margaret's garden used to be. The earth was soft and dark under her fingers. She'd asked if she could plant something, said she wanted to grow things that stayed. He told her that was the best idea he'd heard in years. He watched her for a while, how focused she became when her hands were in the soil. She had that kind of presence, quiet, intent, like every small act mattered. And maybe it did. Later that afternoon, she came inside carrying a few daffodils she'd cut from the back lot. Cal was in the kitchen pouring coffee. Found these. "Growing wild," she said, holding them out. "Thought the house could use a little color." He took them with a nod, filled an old mason jar with water and set them on the table. They sat for a while, sipping their drinks in companionable quiet. Then she said it, softly. "I want to stay." Cal looked at her, careful not to let the hope rise too quickly. "You sure?" She nodded. "I know I'm not your Lily, but being here, it's the first place that's felt like it could be mine, not borrowed, not temporary." He set his mug down. "You don't owe me anything. Not for the soup or the shelter or the lullaby. You don't have to choose this." "I know," she said, "but I want to. Not because I'm lost, but because I'm not." Cal leaned back in his chair, studying her. "That's a big decision. So's letting someone believe you're their daughter," she said with a small smile. He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Touché." She grew quiet again, fingers curled around her mug. "Do you think it's possible to belong somewhere, even if your story didn't start there?" "I think," Cal said slowly, "that home isn't about where you start. It's where you decide to stay." She looked out the window. "Then this is home." He didn't answer, just reached across the table and laid his hand over hers. That evening she asked him something unexpected. "Do you think I should keep the name Lily?" Cal glanced up from the paperwork he was sorting. "You don't have to." "I know. But I've gotten used to hearing it from you. It feels earned." He thought for a moment. "Names are just words. Who you are, that's built every day." She nodded. "Then I think I'd like to keep it. Not because it's who I was, but because it's who I've become." He smiled. "Then Lily it is." She beamed, and he realized it was the first time she'd said it like a choice. Not a question, a declaration. That weekend, they repainted the outside of the garage. The old white siding had long since faded to a tired grey, and Lily had insisted the place needed a fresh coat. "Something warm," she said. "Something that makes people smile when they drive by." They settled on a soft sage green and spent 2 full days brushing, climbing ladders, wiping paint from their faces. When it was finished, Cal stood back with his arms crossed, nodding in approval. "Looks like it belongs," he said. "So do we," she replied. Later, she brought out the journal, the one that had once belonged to Margaret, then to her. She handed it to Cal. "You should write something," she said. He hesitated. "It's your book now." It was hers first, then yours, then mine. "I think it belongs to all of us." Cal took it, opened to a blank page, and stared at it for a long moment before writing. April 23rd. The girl who wasn't Lily chose to stay, and maybe that means more than blood ever could. She plants flowers now, fixes things without being asked. She walks through this house like someone who's lived here all her life, and maybe in some way she has. The music's back. So is the light. He passed the journal back. She read the entry twice, then closed the cover gently. That night, before bed, she paused at his door. "Good night, Dad," she said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't hesitant, just steady, clear. Cal's chest tightened. He opened his mouth, but the words caught, so instead he nodded. "Good night, Lily." And just like that, the house no longer echoed, it breathed. The day the song aired on the radio, the whole town heard it. It was Cal's idea at first, half-formed, mumbled one evening over coffee, while Lily practiced scales on the old piano. "You remember how Margaret always said music was meant to be shared?" he'd said, his voice wrapped in memory. "She used to send cassette tapes to the local station on Sundays, hymns mostly. sometimes little duets she played with Lily. Folks loved them. Lily turned from the piano, brow lifted. So you think we should record something? Maybe. Not to be famous, just to put it out there, something for her. For the memory of what this house used to sound like. Lily didn't answer right away. Then she nodded slowly. I think she'd like that. They recorded the song the next day. Cal brought out Margaret's old handheld recorder, the one with the faded play record button that clicked too loudly. It felt clunky in a world of smartphones and apps, but it still worked, and somehow that felt right. Lily sat at the piano and began with a quiet, steady melody, Margaret's lullaby. But this time she added her own verse, something new, something hopeful. Golden sky, hush your cry. Mama's love never says goodbye. Though the wind may pull us wide, there's a light we find inside. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was pure, honest, the kind of sound that stopped you mid-step and made you remember something soft and long forgotten. When the final chord faded, they sat in silence for a long moment. That's the one, Cal said. They sent it to the station with a short note signed simply, From Lily and Cal, in memory of Margaret Bennett. 3 days later, it played during the morning segment, right between a weather report and a local ad for firewood. Cal had just stepped out to refill his coffee when the phone rang. He picked it up, expecting it to be Frank from the parts shop. Instead, a woman's voice, gentle, crackling slightly from age and emotion, spoke on the line. Hello, I hope this isn't a mistake, but I heard the song on the radio, and I think I know that melody. Cal stood still. Yes, ma'am? The voice trembled. My name is Virginia Harper. My sister Evelyn lived in Bozeman for most of her life. She passed a few years ago, but her granddaughter, her name was Amelia, used to sing that song. I haven't heard it in over 15 years, not since the girl went missing. Cal's grip tightened around the receiver. Did you say Amelia? Yes, Amelia Jane Harper. She was 9 when her mother died. Evelyn raised her. Then one day she just vanished. We thought maybe she'd run off, or worse. The police looked. We all did. But it's like she disappeared into thin air. Cal's heart thudded. The woman on the phone paused. I'm sorry, I heard the voice, and something in me said, that's her. I know I sound foolish, but... No, ma'am, Cal said softly. You don't sound foolish at all. When he hung up, he sat at the table for a long time, staring at the sunlight creeping across the floorboards. Lily, Amelia, came in minutes later, humming the song under her breath. She stopped when she saw his face. What is it? He handed her the note he'd scribbled from the call. She read it once, then again. I have a name, she said, her voice barely audible. A real one. Maybe, Cal said carefully. It's not confirmed, but it could be something. She folded the paper slowly. Do you think it's true? I don't know, he admitted, but if it is, there's family out there that's missed you for a long time. She sat down across from him. I thought this part of the story was over. I thought I'd found the answer. You did, Cal said. You found a truth. Maybe not the one we thought, but one that mattered, and now maybe there's more. A long silence passed between them. Then Lily, Amelia, spoke. If this is real, if Virginia is my great-aunt, what happens to us? Cal's jaw tightened. Nothing changes. If you don't want it to. She looked down at her hands. I want to meet her. I want to know what I've forgotten. But I don't want to leave this behind. You don't have to, Cal said gently. Truth isn't a replacement. It's a layer. One more piece of who you are. She breathed in deeply, then smiled. I don't think Margaret would have liked that, he nodded. She would have called it grace. That evening, Lily sat by the garden, writing in the journal beneath the pink light of a setting sun. Cal watched from the porch, the old rocker creaking gently beneath him. She came in later, barefoot, dirt under her nails, cheeks glowing. "I want to go see her," she said. "Virginia, but only if you come with me." Cal nodded, his voice caught in his throat. "Of course, not just as company," she added, "as family." He stood and opened his arms. She stepped into them without hesitation. As the stars rose overhead, Cal thought of how much had changed since the night he found her in the garage. She had come in from the cold, nameless and broken. Now she had a name, and still, by choice not circumstance, she was his Lily. 6 months later, the garage looked almost brand new. The once faded siding gleamed soft green beneath the September sun. Hanging baskets spilled over with marigolds and trailing ivy. A new wooden sign, hand-painted in white script, swung gently. Above the entrance, Cal and Lily's Garage and Coffee, repairs for engines and hearts. Inside, the place still smelled of motor oil and dust, but now also of cinnamon, freshly ground beans, and the occasional burst of laughter. At the back, beside the workbench, an old piano stood proudly, clean, tuned, polished. A tip jar sat. On top, labeled "For the Music Fund and maybe cookies." Lily had insisted the small cafe corner had been her idea. What started as a thermos and a plate of homemade muffins for neighbors had turned into a cozy counter space, a coffee machine donated by the church, and a few bistro tables picked up at a garage sale. Most mornings now the locals stopped in for a tune-up and stayed for the warmth, but it wasn't just the coffee, it was the song. Every morning at 8 a.m., without fail, Lily sat at the piano and played the lullaby, Margaret's lullaby, and people came to hear it, not for its perfection but for its soul. It had become the town's little ritual, a melody that reminded them to slow down, to feel something again. That morning, Cal stepped out of the house carrying a tray with 2 mugs of coffee and a folded newspaper. He found Lily already seated. Outside on the porch swing, hair tucked beneath a scarf, journal open in her lap, she smiled as he handed her the mug. "Smells like autumn," she said, taking a sip. "Smells like hard work and maple syrup," he said. "You sure we're not running a breakfast joint?" She grinned. "Give it time." They sat together, the morning soft around them. "How's Virginia?" Cal asked. "She's good," Lily replied. "We talk every week now. She's sharp as ever. Sent me a box of old photos last week, me as a baby, birthdays, even a picture of the cat I used to sing to." Cal chuckled. "That poor cat. She said I used to make up songs about his tail. I believe her." There was a pause. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. "To Bozeman, being with her." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I did," she admitted. "For a while I thought maybe that's what I was supposed to do, reclaim the life I lost. And now," she turned to him. "I have 2 lives," she said. "The one I was born into and the one I chose. I visited my roots, but I've already planted new ones." Cal's throat tightened. "I want to stay here," she said. "With you. This is home." He nodded, blinking back something that tried to rise. Then home it is. Later that afternoon, a small group gathered outside the garage. Locals, friends, curious travelers. Lily had written about it on the town's bulletin board. A little music, a little story, a lot of heart. She sat at the piano, hands poised, voice steady. Cal stood beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder. "Some of you know this song," she said to the group. "It's old and it's new. It was written by a woman who loved deeply and left behind more than she ever realized." She glanced at Cal. "It brought me here. It helped me find a name, a memory, and a home. And it taught me that sometimes the things we lose bring us exactly where we're meant to be." She began to play. The familiar melody rose, slow and full. Her voice followed, richer now, anchored. Around them the listeners fell into stillness. Even the birds seemed to pause. "Golden sky, hush your cry. Mama's love never says goodbye. Though the wind may pull us wide, there's a light. we find inside. When the song ended, no one spoke right away. It was the kind of silence that held something sacred, an understanding beyond words. Then applause, gentle, heartfelt, like a warm wave washing over the space. As people trickled back to their days, one older woman lingered. She pressed a wrinkled hand to Cal's. "Thank you," she whispered, "for keeping something beautiful alive." He only smiled. That night, the stars were bright, scattered like silver dust across the dark canvas of sky. Cal and Lily sat by, the fire pit out back, mugs of tea in hand, the scent of pine smoke curling around them. "I wrote something," Lily said suddenly. "In the journal." "Want to read it?" he asked. She shook her head. "I want to give it to you." She handed him the book, a new page, dated in her neat handwriting. October 12th. Today, I played Margaret's song for the town. I wore her scarf, used her recipe for muffins, and sat beside the man who taught me that family isn't always written in blood. It's written in kindness, in consistency, in the choice to stay. I may not be Lily by birth, I may be Amelia, but I am, without question, his Lily. Cal closed the journal gently, cradling it like something breakable. "You're a good writer," he said, his voice thick. "I had a good teacher," she replied. They sat for a while, watching the flames crackle and fade, and when the fire burned low and the night grew deep, Cal glanced up at the stars, just as he had for years, searching for something, anything, to fill the quiet. This time, he wasn't searching. This time, the quiet was full. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Leave a comment and tell me which part of the world you call home, and what this story meant to you. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, stories about kindness, healing, and quiet hope, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Thank you truly for spending this time with us, whether you came here by chance or choice. I hope the music stays with you. Until next time, take care and keep the story alive.